All right, boom. We are live. We are
Good morning.
live
Good morning.
on Zoom here. Mine still says that we've been trying to the last couple of minutes trying to get us to stream on Facebook, but for some reason Facebook ain't playing well this morning. Um, so we're just gonna rock and roll with where we are right now, which is where we are right now. I am Kirk M. Samuels, the Intimacy Incubator. With strength, wisdom, gentleness, and mercy, I co-create a world of intimacy and unconditional connection by teaching and inspiring 1 million men how to live free from internet pornography. And this morning on UpliftHim, I got a guy. I got a guy. I got one of the guys. I got one of the world changers out here, and I want to introduce you all to a buddy of mine. A world changer, a man whisperer. I just came up with a new title for you, man. You're the man whisperer.
I like that.
Let me introduce you all to my man, Jason B Kendrick. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing well, sir. It's been just a pleasure to be on here with you and to have this opportunity to spread some more knowledge and to have another opportunity to conversate with you. I know we'll probably have to be concise and to the point today because you and I have a tendency of talking. It's so much to share.
Yeah. So the backstory is 2 days ago, I guess. Shoot, it's so early now. It's really like a day and a half ago. But 2 days ago, the roles were reversed here. Actually, in person, Jason invited me on into his den, into his arena, and we actually did a Men Speak for Women. And it was phenomenal. So the backstory is we started off with nothing in that conversation, and there's just the two of us. Nothing in terms of script or outline or anything like that. And we talked for a straight hour and 50 minutes. And we probably could have kept going if we didn't just stop for the sake of time. So here this morning, we're like, man, in 30 minutes, we're going to have to be pretty concise, which I'm already 5 minutes into this thing. So anyhow, yeah, that's kind of the backstory. We have a tendency to go and go and go. So let's get right into who this guy is, man. Who is this guy? I mean, I already said he's a guy. Who is this guy? JBK, where were you born, man?
Well, I grew up as in a military family, so I was technically born in Kansas on an Army base, but then by the time I was 6 months old, we were in Germany, and then most of my family's from Central Texas, so I have this Germany South connection because I lived in Texas, Georgia, Alabama. Then after I got out of the military, I moved here to Colorado because I realized I didn't have to stay in the South, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, I didn't know you were in the military, man. Well, family military. So you might have a German Texan drawl, whatever that looks like.
Well, I worked real hard to be to change my accent so that I'm more easily understood.
I hear you, man. Hey, so these days, man, you do a lot of work with guys, man. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been interesting as a nice guy or a second generation nice guy. I have surrounded myself with women, and like most nice guys, we tend to, shy away from other men, and because of our relationships with our fathers and things. And so, that would take the whole 30 minutes to really unpack that fully, but I used to surround myself with women, and then around my last birthday, I just got this inspiration that I really needed to work with men because after my father passed a few years ago, and I've been really working on my father-son relationship and the wounds and things that still exist with that. And so it was just like, well, I need to work with men. And so that has really led me to being open to men and learning about our own traumas and our own, the scars that we as men are dealing with these days. And what has been really interesting is as I began working with men for about 6 months to a year, it led naturally right back to working with women because everything I was learning with men, I wanted to bring to the ladies, and then I wanted to learn from the ladies and bring that back to the men. And so that's where the kind of man speak for women thing came from, where as I'm learning and understanding more about how we as men communicate, how we think, bringing that back to the ladies and saying, hey, this is how we talk. This is how our minds work. And if you're aware of that, it helps to bridge the gap between our communication. And so that's really the main focus now is it's really about the masculine and feminine dynamics and how we can become better partners and better communicators together.
So what kind of, I mean, how does that play out? How does that manifest? What does that look like in terms of your specific work with guys?
Well, it's really about just there's awareness and growth. It's really about the education on what is different. Things like the three basic needs for masculine and feminine. Things that we're it's like all those things as we're quote unquote adults now, and all the things in school that we didn't learn that we really could have used as adults, like how to pay bills and taxes, and these things that you just have to figure out. It's the same with relationships and relating, as masculine and feminine. We're just thrown out into the world, and I know depending on which culture you come from, your parents might have been no dating, no girlfriends, no don't interact, and then all of a sudden you get to a certain age, like, why aren't you married? Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And so this is really about that education and becoming aware of how our minds work differently, and then how we can bridge that gap and go, okay, in most cases, when women are talking to women, they get it. When men are talking to men, they get it. We our minds work the same, but when we try to bridge that gap, there's that disconnect. And just understanding how our minds work differently and how we communicate differently, just so that we can understand and release some of the frustration, because a lot of the frustration I feel in most relationships is just that ignorance about how our minds work. If we, in most of the couples that I counsel, when I do simple things like just basic personality types, and all of a sudden one of them looks at the other one and goes, oh, that's why you do that. I never knew that. Used to bug the crap out of me. But it's just that awareness piece. And so, opening up some awareness so that we're not frustrated or struggling against just our natural tendencies as men and women communicate.
Yeah. So do you work with guys one-on-one? Do you what format do you work with guys and or couples or?
I will work with men, couples, women in any format that I can. I love to get couples in person, guys in person. I Zoom, over the phone, whatever. What has really been coming up lately is a lot of the getting on stage and doing group coachings, and really having the opportunity to interact and having some fun with personality types and listening styles and these different things, and having a lot of folks get to experience what it's like to actually listen from the heart and be open to the person they're trying to connect with, versus being stuck in your head and analyzing what do they mean by that.
Yeah. So you mentioned two words kind of a minute or two ago that I really want to get into today, and that's the whole notion of nice guy, the whole notion of whatever that means, nice guy. And so I'm wondering, and it kind of I guess the foundation for the conversation today is I'll put out the question. First of all, the notion of a nice guy, and then secondly, how does that relate to me being a nice guy versus a masculine guy?
Yes. Well, nice guy is kind of a misnomer. Nice guys really, we believe we're nice guys, and that goes back to since 200 years ago in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, men have been leaving their homes, and then we've just adopted this philosophy that men don't really have any sort of purpose or place in rearing children. So men are just kind of absentee, even if they're physically there. All of the rearing of the kids and everything has been delegated to the women. And so we as men or as boys growing up have been losing that natural experience of what it is to be a grown, whole, healthy man. We don't have that father figure or the uncles or whoever in our lives. And so we have naturally been accustomed to looking to the feminine for our validation, for our worth. And our ladies, the women in our lives are overloaded, and they're doing the best they can and trying to raise little boys into what they believe men are. But most of us have been so conditioned to look to the feminine for our validation and for our worth that we have created this kind of nice guy syndrome, where we're trying to do everything we can to appease the ladies. We're twisting ourselves in pretzels and bending over backwards each day to appease the women in our lives, which has frustrated women in the long run because they're not seeing as strong, grounded, purposeful men. And so the nice guy syndrome is kind of a misnomer, because we believe we're being nice, we're nice guys, but it's actually a manipulation It's us doing what we think we need to do to make them happy, and then what tends to happen is we deny our own uh, desires or needs in favor of the ladies in our lives, and then we become manipulative. And it's,
Mm,
it's kind of unconscious manipulation, but it's like, oh well, I'll do what you want now, but then sooner or later those needs come up, and they need to be met. And a lot of times that looks like either an explosion or an acting out or the midlife crisis or these different things. And so becoming aware of just the societal issues that has brought up, because we don't live on islands like we believe we do, and we're not living in a vacuum. And for all these men who have been conditioned into nice guy syndrome and living that way, it has equally created um, an influx of what I call superwoman syndrome, which most women today believe they have to be everything for everybody. And so
mm,
there's this huge imbalance. The men are more, we're more feminized, and the ladies are more masculine, living from a more masculine viewpoint, especially, all the entrepreneurs and the business owners and ladies in corporate America. They believe in a, naturally false way that to be in business means you have to be in your masculine. You have to
mhm.
fight.
Yeah, and so it sounds like kind of digging in there, or what I hear between the lines is that we feel like in order to be, and obviously a lot of this we're talking generalities,
Yes, yes.
but almost a scenario where a guy I want to do the right thing, and so I want to make her happy, and so that by that I want to sacrifice kind of
Yes.
who I am and sacrifice what I need and what I want, all that for the sake of making her happy. And then, you know, I mean, for one, we find ourselves with a person that is human, and and so
Hopefully.
making her happy is kind of relative to a lot of things in her life that don't necessarily have to do with us. And
Right.
then, to your point, I can see how, yeah, then we end up, and I'm pretty sure I've experienced this in life. Then we end up just kind of, after we have sacrificed our identity, if you will, or our masculinity, are the ways that we're naturally driven. Then one day we kind of look up and say, wait a minute, where'd I go? And then I think you almost get that snapback kind of thing of, from a guy of, I'm so stretched outside of who I am, that then you get what may come back as some level of rebellion, or pulling away from the wife, or the woman in his life, or or seeking some kind of outlet to medicate the fact that he's not who he is. He's a lion, but he's staying bad like a lamb. Um, and so I mean, I've actually seen that play out. Now, when you talk about the masculine versus feminine, I mean, are they kind of one and the same? Are they the opposite in your perspective?
Well, it's kind of like two sides of the same coin, or if you can envision, the yin yang in your mind, we're the black and they're the white, or however you want to look at it. We create a whole together. But what has been happening, and what seems like, is we've both kind of flipped roles. So if you can imagine splitting that yin yang in half and then flipping it and then trying to put it back together, it doesn't fit. And that's kind of what I have been seeing, is that we're banging our heads together trying to fit with these playing different roles that don't fit us.
Hmm.
And a lot of the work that ends up happening with men, that is, first we have to accept where we are, accept that this is the roles we are playing, understand why, and then start to make those natural changes. And we were talking about this the other night, that what we thought being a man was in a relationship is basically opposite of what it needs to be. Yes, we take care of our women, but we also take care of our women from a grounded place of our purpose and our beingness and who we are. Our favorite analogy of the masculine is the riverbanks. We create a space, we create a container for the feminine to flow in. We also, in that sense, create boundaries. And that's one of the things, that being a nice guy, you have no boundaries. You twist yourself into a pretzel, and then naturally and unconsciously, the ladies in your life do not respect you, because they can roll right over you. And that's why they're so frustrated. We're so frustrated, because we're like, well, I'm doing everything you want. Why don't you love me? Why are you so frustrated? Why are you so mad at me? But there's no boundaries there. They don't feel like they can trust you because you're not willing to tell them no. You're not willing to actually go, no, this is who I am and this is my needs and I need to take care of, my purpose in life.
Yeah.
And just that, we used to hear that in relationships or in those good relationships, she would say, oh, he's my rock, he's my foundation. And that's what we lost. We're trying to build castles on quicksand right now. And we've lost that, what it means to be a man and hold space and have that foundational element to us. And that really comes from owning who we are at our core and knowing that our purpose and our core beingness is what we bring to relationship. It's not about, the happy wife, happy life kind of mentality. There's some validity to it, but if you live your life that way, then she's not happy anymore because she doesn't feel, one of her 3 core needs is security. And security comes from, knowing she can trust you, knowing that you have a backbone and you'll stand up to her, because if you don't stand up to her, what's to say that you will have the will and the backbone to stand up to other women that may be interested in you or whatever. So it's that same sort of thing. Like, you have to have that strong foundation. And it seems, backwards that to have her trust you means to tell her no and stand your ground. But that's exactly what it is. You have to be who you are so she can trust who you are and know that in this relationship, you have your own boundaries and, she can trust you out in the rest of the world.
Yeah. The context of this conversation, with my kind of uplift vehicle is I alternate every other week between male audience and female audience in terms of perspective, in terms of who the voice of the conversation is towards. And this one happens to lean towards guys. And so although, men and women both, participate in terms of viewing these, the audience that we're talking about or talking to is specifically men. So that being said, so some of the tone kind of goes that way. That being said, I kind of wonder if our lack of identity in terms of our masculinity can lead to hyper masculinity in a very off way, in a very broken way, in a very kind of unhealthy way. And I wonder if women are kind of seeing us being posers, and again, I'm talking generalities, being posers as a male population in terms of, of our masculinity. So, when a woman might hear you talk about telling a woman no, or, being a strong man and that kind of stuff, what they may hear is the abusive man, or the guy that's on the other end of the Me Too movement and those sorts of things, the man that objectifies women and consumes women, the man that wants to control and dominate women and all those kinds of things. And I think that's where masculinity, because of lack of identity, has gotten a little bit, a little bit, if not a lot, offhand. Especially me working with guys in terms of pornography struggles. I mean, we could be programmed to objectify, to control, to dominate, even to be violent towards women, because that's kind of the flow of that level of consumption. And so I wonder if the lack of secure identity is what makes some guys kind of go off the rails and overcompensate in what they think is some form of masculinity.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And a lot, we're always dealing in generalities. You got to use that broad paintbrush to kind of touch as many as you can. But most of the time when you talk about nice guy syndrome, most guys' initial reaction is, well, I don't want to be an asshole. They want to go that direction. And in those cases where they're not aware that they're suffering or dealing with nice guy syndrome, and then they finally get to that breaking point, then they usually flip to the other side. And that, they're trying to be the hyper masculine male. And it really, like you said, comes from a lack of self-identity. And when you are understanding who you are at your core, then it becomes more about that silent power, that silent strength, you are the riverbanks or the flagpole or whatever analogy you want to use. There's that solid directness of manhood. And it's that quiet strength. Because on both sides of either the nice guy or the alpha male syndrome, you're kind of at the extremes, and it's really about being strong within who you are. And that's where coming back to your center, what are your values, what are your needs, and making those a priority. Because even though we've been taught the opposite, the ladies in our lives, you know, they may say, I want to be number one in your life, but really they want to be the number one woman in your life. Because every woman wants to know that her man has a purpose and has, you know, he has some purpose in his life. And that purpose is whatever it is for you. It could be being the best dad in the world, or, you know, it could be like us trying to change the world and help every man and woman we can. Whatever that purpose is, that needs to be his number one. So she can be supported in that. So she can be the one that feels like she has, you know, some skin in the game. You know, when you go ahead.
I was going to say, I was just, this conversation, man, I was just having this conversation not too long ago in terms of if I were to advise my daughters of what to look for in a man, one of the first things I would say would be purpose in his life.
Yeah.
Him having some kind of a purpose, some kind of a calling, some kind of something that he is passionate about, something altruistic or something bigger than him, not only for the sake of his heart and his mindset and his goals and that sort of stuff, but I also believe that secondly to that you know, there's a notion of women being able to, if you will, submit to a man or have a submissive openness to following a man and that sort of thing. And I believe that, you know, what's difficult for a woman in terms of the whole notion of submission or following, you know, a man's lead is when the guy doesn't see anything greater than himself in terms of life and in terms of purpose and in terms of all those kinds of things. And so I think when a guy only lives for himself, that's when she says, I don't want to follow that and I don't want to submit to that. But when she sees a man living for and believing in and working towards and having purpose towards something greater than himself, then it's a lot easier for her to come alongside that and to, just like you said, to support that and to lean into that, man. And then we're able to be masculine and at the same time allow her to be feminine as well and allow her to not have to be masculine.
Hearing. And that's, you know, if you don't have a greater purpose in your life, then that's where a lot of our lack of self-awareness comes from. I mean, and it brings up, you know, the three basic needs of masculine and feminine. For men, the three basic needs is, you know, number one is purpose. He needs to have a purpose either greater than himself. There's some sort of purpose. And like I said, it could be just being the greatest father, you know, or changing the world. Number two is a sense of control. You know, a lot of people hear sense of control and they think, oh, controlling man, and he needs to, no, it's a sense of control. He needs to feel like he has some sort of control in his life. And then number three is respect. Without purpose in your life, it's very hard to stand your ground. You know, it's like they say, you either stand for something or you stand for nothing. You know, and that purpose is what he stands for, and that's where the sense of control and the sense of respect comes from. They're all intertwined. You look at the three, you know, basic needs for women is safety, security, and attention or presence. And safety and security sound similar, but really it's safety as in physical safety, you know, monetary safety, security as in where is this going, what is our purpose, are we a team together? And that's where a lot of the standing your ground as a man and having a purpose and being able to say, no, these are my boundaries and these are my needs. That's that security. If she knows your boundaries, she knows she's secure and safe with you. And then that presence piece, you know, a lot of us have been taught that we need to be with our partner 24/7. You know, and there's a lot of that, you know, you get into a relationship and all of a sudden your friends fall away and you spend all your time together and then you wonder why you start fighting and get on each other's nerves. But that presence piece is really conscious, you know, being in the moment presence. Like if you give your woman your full attention and she knows you're 100% with her, she doesn't need 24 hours, 30 minutes, an hour, you know, and that's that thing. She needs to know that she can have all of you at some point, you know, and that's those things. So as men in relationship with women or, you know, in life in general, having your purpose, knowing what your purpose is, and it doesn't have to be some huge life-changing, world-altering thing. Whatever your purpose is, be a great artist, be a great musician, be a great father, whatever your purpose is, hold on to that and make that your number one. You know, and that's what really helps you create that foundation, creates that calm, strong self-awareness, inner strength, and that's what attracts women. You know, and
you know, we've landed on the purpose thing, man, and that's, I mean, I think that goes a long way in terms of the the nice guy versus the masculine guy, and they not having to be necessarily opposing each other, but can be kind of under the same umbrella, can exist in the same space especially when they do exist in the context of purpose. And just as I think about it today, and as a man living out purpose, when you have a sense of purpose, it brings out your gifts.
Yes.
It also brings out your weaknesses.
Yes.
I mean, and it can keep you humble. I mean, it can keep you, striving for something greater, striving for something bigger, and so all of those things, allow you to have structure, allow you to have something to guide you. Another guy I really respect relates masculine and feminine to the feminine being like the ocean with winds and waves and chaos, and the masculine being like a boat on the ocean, that's able to drive through and have direction and go in a certain way. So man, just the whole idea of I just noticed we landed on purpose, but purpose can incorporate and it can encompass being a good guy as well as being a masculine guy. Yeah. And so man, that's wow, that's pretty deep, man. That's pretty
well, and that brings up a great point, because there's this misconception that being a nice guy and being a strong male or an alpha male or whatever are somehow opposites or not the same thing. And honestly, to truly be a nice guy is to be that alpha with that purpose, holding your boundaries and holding your ground, because then you're being honest. And that's the biggest detriment to quote unquote nice guys, is bending over backwards for your woman all the time trying to please her. You're actually lying more often than not, being manipulative, because I'm doing all this for you, and then in your core you're like, well, what about me? And if you're actually strong in your foundation and going, no, this is my needs, and this is why, then you're more trustworthy, then you're more honest. And honesty isn't always considered the nicest thing, but it is. The nicest thing to do is be honest and hold your ground in that sense.
And I think and I believe women want that. I believe women want that sense of honesty, that sense, because honesty kind of goes hand in hand with vulnerability. Yes. And it kind of goes hand in hand with transparency as well. That I'm going to be honest with you, and in my honesty, I'm going to be good to you, and in my honesty, I'm going to also show you my good and my bad. But you're going to get it all, and I believe that most women, want all of their man on every side. They want both sides of the coin. And so man, that the whole thing is just it's a phenomenal dynamic concept, man. And so I appreciate you, man. I appreciate what you do, man. We're winding up on time here, man. And waking up this early, man. The reason I schedule to do these this early is because it's just easiest to schedule. Not many people are doing anything at 6:30 in the morning. So if they can just wake up and brush their teeth and and throw on something, then it's good, man. So I appreciate you, JBK, man. You're the real deal. How can people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you?
Pretty easy. You can go to my website, jasonbkendrick.com, all one word, and you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on YouTube. And for those of you that love watching Kurt, the hour and 50 minutes, almost 2 hours we did the other night, I'm gonna be posting that on YouTube, because I know the live video is probably gone or hard to find now. I'll be posting that on so you can have that link and show the people what we're talking about.
Awesome. And that's Jason B. Kendrick with no S. It's not Kendricks. It's Kendrick.
No, it's just Kendrick. So like Kendrick Lamar. But
Kendrick Lamar. Can you sing?
No. Well, I can sing in the shower and in the car.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't want anybody watching.
I hear you, player. I hear you. Man, I appreciate it. Everyone out there watching, again, I mean, the reason I do these is to provide a platform for men to be able to discuss man things, and to be able to kind of open up, and also to, quite honestly, to introduce people to dynamic people that I know that are changing the world, because I'm trying to rebuild connection in our community between men and women. And obviously, as you've heard, there's fantastic overlap between what Jason does, what I do, and so, man, as far as I'm concerned, when the tide comes in, all boats rise. And I want everybody to know this guy. This guy is the real deal. So when I post this video on YouTube, like it, share it, subscribe, all those kinds of things. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm kirkmsamuels.com. He has his website. He's B Kendrick. I'm kirkmsamuels.com. We both have a story as to why we do that way. But absolutely, I mean, if either one of us can be a resource to you, we love to. So we appreciate all of you. Go out there, be good. You don't have to always be nice. Be good and be masculine and live with purpose. And all of that will come together, and our women will be happier and more secure with it. So JBK, I appreciate you, my man.
Thank you, sir. I love this. Let's keep doing it.
No doubt, man. No doubt. We'll do this again in the future, man. I appreciate you, and you have a good day, man.
You too, brother.
See you, bye.